Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swagglehas. And in this video, we gotta talk about stability, or lack thereof, because everywhere I look in my portfolio, I feel a lot of instability out there in the market. Instability? Is that a word? Why did that feel weird coming off my tongue? Instability in the market. If I look at my crypto portfolio, a lot of volatility, no stability there. If I look at my stocks, a lot of volatility in stocks, no stability there. If I look at my table, look at this. Look at this. Shaking of the camera, no stability on my desk right here. But there is one place where you can find a little bit of stability. There is the comic book index, which in this video we have an update for you guys for the month of September, because we are starting to head towards what I feel like is stable territory or stability territory. So in this video, we're gonna do the market update for you guys. We're gonna take a look at the silver and bronze age index, and I'm gonna give you guys my updates on where we're headed and what the projections might be for the next couple months. But before I get into the video, if you guys could drop me a like or a comment or subscribe if you're enjoying the content, helps support the channel, doing those things, I appreciate it. But let's get into this video here today. Now, of course, we gotta tell you guys what the comic book index is in case you guys haven't seen it yet. I've been doing these market reports and putting together the comic book index for us to kind of get a general sense of the market now. The comic book index is the top 100 sold books per age, silver and bronze. I pick the highest volume of graded book and I count those grades. I take the final sale of each month, average them all together, get all the info from GPA data, and we have what we are going to talk about here today. Now, a couple of amendments for transparency reasons. I actually recently swapped out 3 grades of the silver age index, specifically that of ASM number 2, ASM number 3, and Strange Tales 110, which I forgot to put the 110 on the slide, but we're talking about the first appearance of Doctor Strange. Now, I actually dropped these grades down a couple grade points because they were getting too high up there. The index started to weigh too heavily to some of these specific books. So for the ASM 2, we went from a 4.5 to a 3.0. ASM 3 went from a 4.0 to a 3.5. And then Strange Tales 110, we went from a 4.5 down to a 4.0. But let us get into the silver age index with this update. Now, this was where we were at in the month of August. Now, to clarify, this is not drawn to scale here, so we can't focus too much on the specific points, ups and downs. It's really the numbers that we have to pay attention to. But, you know, from July to August, we did have a big drop off in the silver age, where last month we were at the $58,540 range. Previously to that, we were at the $67,910 range. Now here in September, where are we? What is the current market looking like for this previous month? Well, we actually had a slight uptick, and I mean very, very slight overall, but we are now at the $59,781 range. And this is where I'm starting to feel stability, because in a lot of the previous months, we had some bigger drops. I mean, from June to July, it looked like there could have been some market stability there. But generally speaking, in all the months prior, we had bigger drop-offs. And I feel like now kind of the silver age in general is kind of finding its floor. That's not to say that we can't continue to go down from here. In fact, I will talk about that at the end of the video where I think we will be going. But it does feel like we're finding that stability overall. And that is a good thing in my opinion. Whether we go up, 2% or down 2% or even up 5% or down 5%, I think that that's okay for the comic book market. That's probably where we want to be. That gives us as buyers a lot of opportunity to find good deals and know that we're not going to lose out on our investments overall. But if we go on to the bronze age, we got to talk about that, because that one still feels like it is finding its floor. Now, last month in August, we were at the $53,571 range. And for the most part, the bronze age had been on a steady decline. I mean, there were, 1 or 2 months in there where it did see an uptick, but generally speaking, since we rewind the clock all the way back to, April of 21, we've been on that slide all the way down. And the reason for that is that, bronze age, there is much more of a supply out there, which means that month to month, you're going to get pretty accurate data. I mean, there's not going to be many months where there isn't sales for all of the books in the 100. So, when we go into September right here, we can see where we're at. And of course, we are still on the decline, going from 53,000 down to 51,000. So, the bronze age, like I mentioned in the previous time when we were talking about the index, is still headed down. I mentioned that, we were on the high end of the trend line for silver and maybe a little bit still too high on the Bronze Age. I felt like the Bronze Age still has room to go down, and sure enough, we did go down this month. I still think with the Bronze Age, we have a little bit more room to gain as far as getting back into the trend line. So I do think that we're going to continue on this slide for the next month, maybe 2 months. We'll talk about that soon, but let's kind of dig into the side-by-side comparison here. There you can see the comparisons, and again, one of the things I thought was interesting was when you rewind the clock back to 2018, 2019, you could see that the volume, the indexes were very, very close, at least visually on the graph. And then we kind of had a widening of the gap here in 2022. We're getting a little bit closer to it overall, but generally speaking, the Bronze Age still has some room to correct. Silver Age, maybe not so much, depending on how bullish you're feeling about silver comics overall. One of my theories for Silver Age is that, when the index goes down, a lot of times it's because there hasn't been a sale for that particular book, or maybe people got a steal on an auction. I feel like the demand is still there, but I think there's just a lot of people in the market that are taking the wait and see approach for those Silver Age books that they still want to have in their collection. But let's zoom into the graph here. Let's talk about some of these margins here. So in the Silver Age, from August to September, we went 58,545 to 59,781. That's an increase of 2%. Generally speaking, of course, 2%, not a big deal overall. I think that is more of a push, if anything. Again, finding market stability. I think where we are in the Silver Age is a pretty good spot right now. You can see with the Bronze Age, we went from 53,571 to September here. I actually have 2020 on there. I meant 2022 to 51,104. That's a decrease of about 4.5%. I think that we're going to see a decrease of 5% in the next couple months, from here out for the Bronze Age still to come. Some of the key takeaways I think we want to talk about, and this is where I start to, it helps inform me with my predictions of where we're going, because this is, I think, is where, you can kind of see some of the trends forming. But, when we talk about the individual 100 books in the Silver Age and the Bronze Age, and we talk about, okay, how many of those books have gone down, how many of those books have gone up month to month, and then how many are a push. So in the Silver Age, 25% of the books this month sold for less than they did last month, and 13% of the books sold for higher than they did last month, which means 62% of the books basically had a push. A push is basically, a negligible amount. I mean, we're talking $5, $10, maybe $20 of a difference, or exactly the same. But generally speaking, that is actually a good sign, because when I did this particular slide a couple months back, the down percent, I think at that time was like 39% of Silver Age books have gone down, and only like 12% had gone up. So we're starting to get a bigger push margin, which to me is an indication that the floor is finding itself, and we're finding that stability. The Bronze Age is a different story though, because we have 46% of the books sold down. So almost half of the index sold for less this month than it did last month, with only 19% up and then 35% push. I think the push number is really the most important. If we're getting to that territory where, generally speaking, month to month, we're roughly in the same margin range, I think that is a good sign for the indexes overall. So Silver Age, I'm a little more sure of. Bronze Age, I think we still have room to go. Now, last interesting thing to talk about before we kind of do our predictions for the future is the month by month graph. Now, this is specifically the Silver Age month by month, and I think this one is kind of interesting to look at. The thing to focus on here is the orange line, which is 2022, and specifically the month of September. Now, this is actually the first time in the Silver Age history, at least in terms of this index has been formed, that the month of September outsold the month of August. And I think one of the interesting takeaways for that is that, the month of August is where we sort of had all of this news of recession and economy and all of this stuff. And I think that there were a lot of people that, really waited on the sidelines in August. We had a big drop from July to August, and maybe people are starting to think, okay, I kind of weathered the storm a little bit. Maybe where prices are, it's still a good time. And for the first time, September was actually a month that more people spent more money on this index than they usually do. Now, that's not to say that we can't still go down, because in October and November, those tend to be either, months that are slightly slightly up or definitely down in the case of November, which is where I see this market still going. I think October and November will be the down months. And then you can see right there, December is typically a up month for, Silver Age purchases. And I think that this lines up perfectly with Black Panther #2. We're going to get that movie in November. I think that that'll, before we get the film, will probably be at the bottom of our index. And then I think the hype that that film drives, with the potential of a cameo of a certain character that is rumored to come at the end of that film, that cameo with the end of Phase 4 leading into Ant-Man with Kang next year, I think could definitely kind of catapult the market into, more of a bullish scenario. But here are my projections here. Now, the Silver Age, 15 to 20%. That is typically what the Silver Age has returned since 2018 if we're looking at the kind of the models here. Now, a lot of you might be thinking 15 to 20%, that's ridiculous. There's no way that comic books could actually return that type of money. But one of the things you have to remember is that this is not a perfect system, nor is it a perfect formula that you could actually apply. I mean, you have to be able to buy 100 key books, the Silver Age key books that are graded, and you have to be able to get them at fair market value today, which, as you guys know, you can't just go to eBay and find books at fair market value. But if you were in a vacuum and you were able to get, quote unquote, the best deals, the GPA deal rates, which is the, auction prices, and for all of these books, then generally speaking, yeah, you might be able to return 15 to 20%. That's what the model shows. But with that all the way, let's talk about, the projections here. If we look back to 2020, I kind of prorated it because 2020 December is when the market started to really, really blow up. So I pulled it back down to the $40,000 range. That's probably where we should have been based on the trend line before the COVID comic book boom, which based on that number, if we do a 15 to 20% calculation, December of 2022 should bring us to, between 52,900 to 57,600, which, as you can see from where we are, 58, 59, we're still a little bit hot. So I do think the months of October and November will be down a little bit, but I think by the end of the year, we will find that stability. I mean, we're only about 4 to 5% off of where we should be anyways. The Bronze Age, on the other hand, typically speaking, returns about 15% based on the models. In December of 2020, we were at 37,724, which means at a 15% return, we should be at a 49,889 price point by the end of the year. And currently we are at 51,000. So, you kind of prorate that and it feels like we're still a little bit hot with the Bronze Age overall. It does feel like we need to correct, 5 to 10% or more. But again, I really do think that, the months of October and November probably are going to be places where we find the comic book market dropping down a little bit more. And it is also, a potential because of, the economic recession and everything that's going on. We could slip into sort of this despair or fear mode with what is going on with comic books. I mean, people can get really, really desperate and start to liquidate their things. But one of the things I don't think that you will see is that, when you take your comic book collection and drop it off at the, LCS and just liquefy all of your books, that's not money that's going to be reflected on GPA data. GPA data is only going to have, the prime auction houses with, some of the collectors who are still looking to buy those high-end books. So I don't necessarily think just because an LCS picks up a collection for pennies on the dollar, they are then going to price it for, nickels on that dollar. I think that they're still going to sell it at those GPA values. So even if times get really tough on people and they have to sell off all of their books, I don't necessarily think that those prices are going to be reflective of the data that we're kind of seeing online with GPA. Anyways, that's all for this video. Let me know what you guys think. We're kind of finding market stability. I think we're getting right back into the trend line. Feels like a good opportunity to find those deals out there in the market. Again, I always say take the 2020 price, amplify it by 15 to 20% year over year, 2 times over. See if that price is reflective of the book you're considering buying. And if it is, that might be a good purchase. Anyways, that's all for this video. Drop me a like, comment, subscribe if you're enjoying the content, and I'll see you in the next one.